Hello, my name is Mary Ann and I'm an alcoholic. I'd like to welcome you to Recovery in Action, Life on Life's Terms. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you're all here, especially newcomers, in keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. We ask that all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. This is an open Big Book step study meeting where we discuss the 12 steps of recovery as they're written in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, with the focus on their application in everyday life and recovery. This is the 5th session of the 7th cycle of the workshop that was presented on August 24th, 2024, where we completed the 3rd step. Next week, we'll begin the 4th step. If you would like to contribute to the 7th tradition, you may do so using the QR codes displayed. Contributions are applied towards the group's expenses and support our service offices. Recordings of the workshop are available, and if you would like to be placed on the distribution list, please send an email to recoveryinaction462@gmail.com to receive the links. These links are unlisted and not public. I request that you not share them at the public level or post on any social media sites. The workshop typically begins with a brief meditation in which an inspirational music video is played. Because of copyright restrictions, it cannot be on the video. However, a link is provided, and I suggest you take a minute, view the video, and take a brief meditation for yourself before you begin the workshop. As the recording begins, the workshop is already in session. Feel free to contact me if you have any additional questions or require my assistance further. I hope you enjoy the workshop. Another custom of this group is to start the workshop by saying the full version of the Serenity Prayer. We're all familiar with the first part, but many of us are unaware that there is a second part to it, and I believe it's this second part of the prayer that reflects what recovery is all about. So if you would all please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as he did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Where we are is looking at the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the book of instructions on how to work the 12 steps. Our fellowship got its name from the Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and not the other way around. It wasn't until the book was published that we got the name. We started to be called Alcoholics Anonymous. So the Big Book was written as there weren't meetings. The Big Book was written as a textbook to teach people how to work the 12 steps. And the 12 steps are the instructions of how to get rid of the things that are blocking us off from our higher power, how to get connected to God, and how to stay surrendered from alcohol making our life unmanageable. However, merely reading the Big Book without experiencing it and doing what it says to do, while it can be a pleasant read, we're just reading the book doesn't mean that we have worked the 12 steps. We can't learn how to swim, for example, without jumping in the water. We can read all the instructions we want, but until we actually get in the water, we're not going to be able to learn how to swim. So what we're talking about we're going to the cover page of the Big Book, which states that this is the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Now, I don't get involved in the recovered controversy. I go by what it says in the book. And in the cover page, in the very beginning, it starts off saying that it's the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Now, we need to understand what we mean by recovered. What is that definition? And one definition is that the problem is removed. I don't have to make a choice whether I drink or not, because I don't even think about drinking. I automatically turn to God instead of alcohol when I'm upset. It's no longer an option to solve any of my problems. Selfishness and self-centeredness are gone. I'm no longer angry, fearful, or harmful, and my old destructive ways of thinking and acting have been replaced by new and peaceful ones. So this is what we mean by the problem is removed. It doesn't mean that we don't always have the disease, but we have recovered. The symptoms of the disease are no longer present. Another definition is in the is that of the 10th step promise, which is on page 84. There's lots of promises in the big book, not just the 9th step promises. And the 10th step promise is that we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol, for by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find that this has happened automatically. We'll see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That's the miracle of it. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We've not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. That's our experience, and that's how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And now we're going to jump to page 27, where it defines recovered as ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces in the lives of these men and women, are suddenly cast to one side, and a new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So that's on page 27 if you want to look it up. Then when we go into the appendix in the spiritual experience, which is at the back of the book, it states that the description of being recovered is that it is a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism, has manifested itself among us in many different forms. So that's in the spiritual experience. And now we're going to jump back to the forward to the first edition. In the very, very beginning, first edition, it states that we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. And then it later goes on to say that the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. However, the desire to stop drinking is not the only requirement to become recovered. There's other things involved, such as being willing and actually doing everything that the big book says to do. So this is where we have to learn to follow the instructions. And sometimes we may have to work a little bit harder to find someone who actually knows how to do this. But again, there are so many references to recovered, and I've heard all sorts of stories where people will say, well, Bill actually didn't mean recovered. He meant recovering, but he was a salesman and all of that stuff. And I've actually checked with some historians. That is a myth that Bill Wilson actually meant recovering. When he used the word recovered, he used the word recovered. These are his words. So, but I've heard all kinds of people come up to me. Yeah, well, Bill didn't really mean that. Well, if he didn't mean it, why did he say it so many times?
And that's the reality of it. So basically, this brings us to step one. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Now, one of the things that we did in the very beginning, we did what I call the big book speed date, where we went over a very high level overview of the actual book itself. And we spent a full session just on doing that. And then we got into starting exactly with step one. And for the last 2 weeks, we went over the unmanageability questionnaire, which is in the workbook. And what that unmanageability questionnaire is it's looking at all aspects of our life from the perspective of the bedevilment, semi-restless, irritable, and discontent. And it really gives a really great overview of all aspects of our life to see where there is unmanageability. As an alcoholic, I'm powerless over alcohol and my life is unmanageable. So I've got to look at all those areas of my life where there is unmanageability. And I recognize that. And we talk about that. Bill Wilson explains in his story about how initially, and many alcoholics make this mistake, in that they think that self-knowledge is enough. All I need to know is I'm an alcoholic. If I drink, I'm going to get in trouble. And Bill Wilson found this out the hard way. And that is, as a real alcoholic, the only thing self-knowledge does is make me realize that I cannot take just one drink without being physically driven to take one drink after the other. This then allows me the opportunity, if I'm spiritually fit, to pass on that first drink. And I can only do this on a continuous basis if I'm connected to my higher power. That is where the unmanageability and the powerlessness comes in. I realize I can't do it, and I have to be connected to a higher power, which brings me to step two. Step two is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And last week we went through several activities in identifying, well, what is my higher power? What do I consider being my higher power? And that's part of the reason why I even selected the song today for Waymaker, because for some people, their higher power might be the Waymaker that makes the way for me, or it's something greater than me. It doesn't necessarily have to be my concept of God, but everybody has their own concept of God. And that's one of the things that makes step two in Alcoholics Anonymous, which separates us from many of the religions that are out there, because we are not a religion. And we don't teach religion, although I've had many people say to me, well, AA is too religious. I have no idea what religion they're referring to, because there are all we are open to any and all or no faith. It's just you have to believe that there's something greater than you that's going to restore you to sanity, because you're crazy. And the insanity is that we pick up the first drink. The insanity is not that, it's not all of the crazy, stupid things that we do when we're drinking. That's intoxication. Even non-alcoholics do stupid things when they're drunk. But the insanity is that we pick up the first drink when we know what's going to happen, and we do it anyway. So in going through, and again, in the workbook, there are several activities that you can go through to help you if you're not clear on what is it that you expect from your higher power. But the only requirement for step two is to answer yes to this question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there's a power greater than me that can solve my problem? So if you said yes to this, then you're done. If you said no, then you need to keep looking for things that are miracles and ask yourself, well, who made this? And then whatever your answer is might be your first concept of a higher power. One thing we have to be very clear on is that 12-step recovery is not self-help. And that's another misconception that's out there, that people think that AA is a self-help group. AA is not a self-help group, because at the root of self-help is the notion that I can help myself. At the root of the 12 steps is the notion that I can't help myself, and only trying to help myself gets me deeper into my alcoholism. So the key to the program has nothing to do with me and my will, and everything to do with my higher power and my understanding of God, and me being surrendered to that God. So when I truly hit rock bottom, when I could do nothing but cry out in pain and anguish, then I'm willing to surrender to God. And then real faith, the faith that will get you working the 12 steps forever, requires hitting rock bottom and hitting it hard. And you may have to hit it a couple of times before you get to step 2. Because, and you may not even realize that you're doing this. It might even be at an unconscious level, but it's important to understand that you can't do anything to make yourself believe in a higher power who can restore you to sanity. However, as the rest of the steps confirm, you can experience the higher power and come to believe as a result of that experience. So this is where we finish step 2. We've hit bottom. We realize that we've had it, we're done. I can't, he can. Step 3 is I think I'll let him. Step 3 is made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Now, for me, it took me 30-something years to see the first 3 words in that step. And I used to think that in step 3, I turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. For some reason, I never saw those first 3 words, made a decision. All we're doing in step 3 is making a decision, because at this point, we don't have the power to turn over our will, which is our thoughts and our lives, which are our actions, to this higher power. Our character defects and our belief that we're in control just won't let us. We could say the words, but we don't really mean it. We can decide to give the higher power we just described when we were doing the step 2 exercises a try. So if you look at the characteristics that you gave your higher power in the activities that we did in step 2, remember we did the activity about if you were about ready to be born, and you had the opportunity to describe to choose your mother. What characteristics would you want her to have? Same question for your father. What characteristics would you want him to have? And again, if you look at those responses, there's absolutely nothing scary or hard about the making the decision. Step 3 invites you to become your own theologian, to create an idea of God that allows you to trust in something greater than yourself. It's this fact that makes practicing the 12 steps a spiritual discipline and not a religious one. That's the difference. And step 3 is on page 63, and it's only a decision. I make that decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God, but it's just making a decision. It's, for example, if I make a decision to enroll in college, okay, maybe I want to go back to school and get an advanced degree. And I make a decision, I want to get this advanced degree. Just making that decision doesn't give me the degree. I've got to fill out an application. I've got to pay my tuition. I've got to show up. I've got to take the classes. I've got to do the assignments. And then when I finish all those assignments, then I get my degree. So just making the decision doesn't mean that I've gotten the degree. I've got to do the work. So we've made a decision here to do the work. See, in step 3, I don't have the power to turn my life and my will over. If I did, this would just be a 3-step program instead of a 12-step program. All I'm doing in step 3 is making the decision to give my concept of a higher power a try. Now, the 3rd step prayer is found on page 63 of the big book, and I love it. It's one of my favorite prayers in the program. And it goes, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So what I'm doing is I'm making an offer. I'm offering myself to God. I'm saying, okay, God, I want you to do these things for me. And, I'm asking for your help because I want to always do your will. So I've made the decision that I'm starting to do the work. It doesn't mean I'm done. I have not turned my will and my life over yet. I'm asking God, and now I'm getting ready to do the work. All that's needed right now for step 3 is faith. Faith is a state of openness and trust. It's an analogy. An analogy of that is that when you're swimming, you don't grab a hold of the water. Instead, you relax and you float. The attitude of faith is to let go and become open to truth, whatever that truth might turn out to be. So you start to find out your truth by completing your 4th step inventories, and then using that information to get rid of the things that are blocking you off from your higher power. And the things that are blocking you off from your higher power are your character defects. See, I can't turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him if I am still caught up in all of my character defects, which are blocking him out. So this basically completes the first 3 steps. And there's an interesting pattern as we move forward from steps 4 through 9. Step 4 is the beginning of the work. And the pattern is that steps 4 and 5 are looking at our lives and then discussing what we found with someone. Steps 6 and 7 are where we start to hook up with God. And steps 8 and 9 are where we correct the things that we've done in the past. Then going back at it again, steps 4 and 5 are all about getting things straight with ourselves. 6 and 7 are all about getting things straight with God. And 8 and 9 are about getting things straight with the people in our lives. So step 10 is all about us. Step 11 is all about God, which is where we actually turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understand him. And step 12 is all about other people. So let me just see. Yes, it is here. Okay. So now in the workbook, we actually have the 3rd step prayer worksheet. And what this does is it breaks down the prayer. Like, what does this prayer mean to you? So what I want to do is I'm going to go here, and I want to open this up to some discussion so we can stop the recording.
Thank you so much for your participation. I hope you enjoyed the workshop, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And now, please join me in our closing prayer, which is St. Faustina's Prayer for Mercy. Eternal God, in whom mercy is endless and the treasury of compassion inexhaustible, look kindly upon us and increase your mercy in us, that in difficult moments we might not despair nor become despondent, but with great confidence submit ourselves to your holy will, which is love and mercy itself. Amen.